Hey, how does it feel to have nobody from the bride's family at the wedding? We're popping champagne and celebrating my engagement. To Brittany, for that reason, we'll be attending Kristen's engagement dinner. This is a very important time for Kristen. You're her older sister, so please understand. Besides, you've always been a strong person. I believe you'll be fine on your own. Those words were more than a family message to me. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Standing in the dressing room mirror, dressed in pure white, I felt my heart beat quietly and somehow coldly. Minutes before the ceremony, the notification tone on my phone rang through the silence like a signal for an ending. In that instant, my world ended and, in the truest sense, began. It was a system alert telling me that the final execution condition of the large system migration plan I had spent years designing, Project Independence, had been met. As predicted, as simulated, no margin for error. I opened the messaging app calmly and read the full, mocking text. My family, because I was a strong girl, had chosen not to attend my wedding and instead went to my sister's engagement party. The phrase strong girl sounded like an old command in an obsolete program. Every time that command ran, I had been forced to execute processes called self-sacrifice and endurance. But today was different. I had the administrator privileges, the admin password, to disable that obsolete command and update the entire system. I traced the pure lace of my wedding dress with my fingertip and quietly returned to the phone's home screen. No trembling, only an icy calm. Folder name, Utilities. Without hesitation, I tapped the shortcut I had pre-configured inside it. First tap. The banking app launched and my biometric cleared. I opened the preset Scheduled Transfers list and swiped left on the entry labeled Father Welfare Vehicle Loan. I tapped the Confirm button to stop. One of the burdens that had been deducted from my account every month disappeared. Next tap. I opened the Home Network Management app and selected the icon for my parents' Wi-Fi router. From Shared Device Management, I selected my parents' and Kristen's phones, tablets, and smart TV and tapped Revoke Access Permanently. The comfortable internet environment they took for granted was, in that moment, cut off by my hand. I continued by opening the account management pages, bookmarked, for the many shared subscription services I had been paying for, and removed their accounts from family sharing in the same way. All of it took less than a minute in total. I had rehearsed these steps in my head and in a real test environment countless times for this day. When all protocols were complete, I opened the family group chat one last time. With cold fingertips, I typed the final line that would end 33 years of being the obedient daughter. Good to hear you're having fun. All transfers and shared services have just been stopped. Pay for your own party costs from now on. Thanks for your concern. But with my exploiters gone, the venue in my heart is full. Bye! I'm going to vow eternal love to the person who treasures me the most in the world. When I pressed send, my heart was as calm as a flat sea. I felt the heavy chains I'd carried for years shatter and fall away. Connection to the old system was completely severed. The signal announcing the start of my soul's war for independence had sounded. I set my phone on the table and stood before the large dressing room mirror. The woman reflected back at me wore a pure white wedding gown I didn't recognize. No, this might be the real me. Shed the old skin, reborn in a new form. The real Brittany. Was this really the right thing to do? In the silence, the obsolete program threw one last question up from the depths of my mind. The curses named Good Daughter and Kind Sister made a final attempt at resistance. Answering that question, a flood of past log data flashed through my head. The living room scene when I was forced to take on a massive loan alone. My mother's tears, my sister's innocent cruelty, and my father's silence. No, it isn't a matter of whether it was right. There was no other choice. If I had stayed connected to that system, my resources would have been continuously siphoned away until I was rendered functionally dead, mentally and financially. This was not sentimentality. It was the only rational decision to survive. At that moment, the dressing room door opened quietly. Standing there was my sole accomplice, Jonathan Smith. He looked from the phone in my hand to my composed face and understood everything. The trigger's been pulled then. Yes, by their own hands, as predicted, with no error. I see. He let out a short breath, came to my side, and gripped my hand firmly but gently. That warmth only strengthened my resolve. Aren't you scared? No. I looked him straight in the eyes and answered clearly. Fear is for the unknown. What's happening today is not unknown to me. It's the result of years of analysis, patterns, probabilities, repetitions. It's one of the most certain outcomes my work ever produced. Today simply made that prediction real. You are really strong. I only had to become strong to survive. At that moment, someone knocked softly on the dressing room door. It was my college friend, Tess. She looked pale and worried about the empty seats in the venue. Brittany, are you really okay? Your family, no one is... Tess's eyes filled with tears, and I gave her the best smile I could muster right then. I'm being reborn today. I've cut every old chain with my own hands. Watch me. Witness my true birth. Something in my determined gaze registered with Tess. She wiped her tears and nodded hard. Okay, Brittany, give me your best smile. We're all your family today. The music swelled and the doors opened. Alone, I walked down the pristine white aisle. At the end were my friends' warm faces and Jonathan Smith waiting at the altar. A glance at the empty family section brought no pain. What had existed between them and me had been nothing but one-sided exploitation. Looking at Jonathan in front of me, certain I could make a true commitment with him, I spoke my vows into the microphone more powerfully than anyone. The hall erupted in applause and my friends' cheers pushed me forward. During the reception, soft afternoon sunlight bathed the garden terrace. Still, the gap left by the empty family seats cast a slight hollow in my heart. Sensing how I felt, Jonathan leaned in and whispered by my ear. Tired a little? Yes, just a bit. Shutting down a system takes more energy than I thought. When I smiled at him, he stroked my hair with affection. It's okay. From here, it's the startup sequence of the new system. It's going to be wonderful. Just as he said, the sequence began in ways I couldn't have imagined. At Jonathan's friend Brian's offbeat suggestion, the party was live-streamed on social media, and strangers were invited to fill the empty seats with blessings. At first, I thought it was a joke, but people who had seen the posts began arriving one after another to say, congratulations. Before I knew it, the venue that had felt lonely was packed with beaming faces and cheerful energy. The pure goodwill and congratulatory words from strangers were the first unconditional blessings I had ever received. At that moment, I understood with my whole heart that family is not determined by blood. Watching the unbelievable scene unfold, Jonathan and I were overcome with tears of joy, wrapped in warm love. The dreamlike time passed quickly. After the bustle faded on the terrace, I surrendered to a pleasant tiredness. Jonathan sat next to me and gently placed a champagne glass in my hand. What an unbelievable day. Yes, truly. I didn't even know how to cry tears of joy. We clinked glasses lightly. The crisp clink sounded in the twilight sky. I watched the sunset tremble inside the champagne glass and quietly savored the meaning of the day. How much resolve had it taken to bring this perfect day about? Sensing my thoughts, Jonathan held my hand without saying a word. That warmth rekindled the memory of the day 5 years ago when our real fight began. When my father collapsed in an accident and needed an expensive welfare vehicle, I was summoned to my parents' house. It wasn't a meeting. My mother slammed open a thick catalog and pushed the most luxurious model in front of me, then said as if it were obvious, "You'll take out the loan." When I logically proposed splitting the cost, my suggestion was immediately smothered by emotion. How ungrateful you are. Are you going to abandon your father? My sister collapsed into tears. My mother wore a look of disappointment. My father just hung his head. A perfectly staged theater designed to isolate me. I made one last attempt at resistance. I never said I'd abandon him. I only suggested we share the burden. Isn't that what helping each other really means? My painfully reasonable rebuttal left my mother momentarily speechless, but she quickly played her strongest card. Who do you think raised you? Those words were a curse. They invalidated all logic and implanted an absolute guilt in me, the strongest kind. How much do you think we've sacrificed for you? And now you can't even repay us a little? What an ungrateful child you've become. I'm so sad. There were faint tears in her eyes. She truly believed she was the tragic mother. In this system, she was the absolute justice. Nothing I said could change that. Every counter-argument would be absorbed and neutralized. That is how the system was designed. I realized that any resistance was useless and said only, "I understand." The instant those words left my mouth, my mother and Kristen's faces lit up. "Really? Thank you, Brittany. As expected of you, sis. We can count on you." Their sudden turnaround chilled me to absolute zero. That night, I went to Jonathan Smith's place, and together we sketched the blueprint for our future. No, at that point, it wasn't a concrete blueprint yet. We created a new file and named it Project Independence. On the first line, I wrote, "System name, Brittany family. System overview, an asymmetric exploitative system designed with the sister as the primary resource provider and the younger sister as the primary resource consumer. Vulnerability, unconditional trust under the name family." My fight began quietly that night. I endured, analyzed, and designed. A perfect plan to gain complete independence from this warped system, the blueprint for Project Independence. "Make them pull the trigger themselves," Jonathan said. "But what will that trigger actually be?" "I can't decide yet. I don't have enough weapons right now." "Right. For now, we collect data and keep analyzing." That night, we pledged to a long-term strategy with no specific dates or execution conditions set. The goal was singular: to create a situation in which I would be completely independent, financially and mentally, so they could no longer exploit me. Over the coming years, the two of us would gather the weapons for that: financial power and proof of their wrongdoing. My lonely battle became our fight that night. So I didn't cry. What happened today was the predicted outcome of the long fight that began 5 years ago. This was not a tragedy. It was simply the final phase of a plan. Snapping back to the present, Jonathan looked at me with a gentle expression that showed he understood how that night 5 years ago had become our origin. Because of that night 5 years ago, today exists. He squeezed my hand hard and said, "Yes, that's why I didn't cry. Everything that happened today is the expected conclusion of the long battle that started then. This isn't a tragedy." I smiled at him. This is a happy ending, the beginning of our true story. The sun had set, and on the garden terrace, candlelight and string lights twinkled like jewels. Gentle conversation with friends slowly soothed my heart. But my fight was far from over. The second phase began that night, in that place. I gave Jonathan a look, excused myself briefly, and moved to a quieter spot indoors. Then I opened Instagram, my other world with 80,000 followers. This was not revenge. This was my declaration of independence. And it would be a reference manual for anyone else suffering from invisible chains. I copied and pasted the post I had prepared for this day, checking each line carefully. There were 3 photos. The first, a wedding photo of Jonathan and me holding hands and smiling in the venue, despite the empty family section. The second, a screenshot of the mocking message Kristen had sent. The third, a screenshot of my mother's merciless email calling me a strong girl. Then, calmly but with all my will behind the words, I wrote, "Today, September 14th, 2025, I married the person I love, Jonathan Smith. I offer my heartfelt thanks to all the friends who gathered to celebrate our new beginning. And to my family, who are not present here but who, in a way, shaped another side of my life. I am, in a sense, grateful as well. They taught me, through their own actions, that blood ties do not prove family. Today, I ended every relationship with people who did not respect me. And if anyone reading this is wearing themselves down under the chains of because they're family, as I once did, I want you to know this. The ones who truly value and love you are your real family. At our wedding today, there were many empty seats, but in the end, countless warm-hearted people with no blood ties filled them. My new life begins here, today. Thank you truly to all of you." I pressed post. At that moment, my phone was hit by a storm of notifications like a scream. Within minutes, there were over 1,000 comments, and the hashtag #BrittanyWedding was trending. It was the moment my quiet act of exposure reached the world. After that, my phone literally never stopped ringing. I never answered, of course. As Jonathan and I had promised, we forwarded all calls to voicemail while staying in a quiet seaside cottage for our honeymoon, watching the records appear as nothing more than log data. Outside, waves rolled gently to shore, but from the phone speaker came the death cries of the collapsing old system. The first message arrived just an hour after the post. It was from Kristen. Her shrill, hysterical voice cut through the air. "Brittany, Are you insane? What was that post? Delete it right now. Thanks to you, my Instagram is flooded with hate comments from people I've never even seen before. This is all because you couldn't even throw a decent wedding. Who holds it at the same time as my engagement party? You're crazy. Call me right now, do you hear me? Classic blame shifting. The word self-reflection does not exist in her dictionary. When I stopped playback, Jonathan, who had been listening, spoke quietly. Amazing. She really believes everything is your fault. To her, you were nothing more than scenery, tools to make her life shine. Yes, a perfect log, I answered coolly. The next message came at midnight, from my mother. It was a carefully calculated mix of sobs, broken words, and victimhood. Hello, Brittany. Please pick up the phone. Everyone in the neighborhood has seen your post. How am I supposed to face them tomorrow? You really did stop your father's car loan, didn't you? How could you do something so cruel? We loved you, raised you with everything we had. And this is how you repay us? You've done this to us. She had no understanding of what they had done. Or rather, she refused to understand. All she could do was lament her own suffering and try to bury me under guilt. Jonathan pulled me close. So her so-called love was just another name for control. The moment you became uncontrollable, this is what happened. Yes, not love, dependency and exploitation. The system simply broke. Because of my post, Kristen lost all her PR contracts within the week. Her social media history was dug up, exposing years of selfish posts, branding her with a permanent digital scar. My parents became completely isolated, my father at work, my mother in her church community. That update came through a call from my uncle on my father's side, his voice almost gleeful. Brittany, I saw your post. Well done. Years of frustration finally lifted. Maybe now your father will finally wake up. The whole family's been calling me, asking what's going on. I told them flat out everything you wrote was true. Especially after your dad's accident, things got unbearable. Listen, if you ever need anything, you come straight to me. You're our pride. His strong support warmed me deeply, proof that I was not alone. By the time the call log topped 100, the last message came. From my father. His voice was thin, trembling. Brittany, it's me. Your father, I'm sorry, I didn't know your mother and Kristen would do that. No, I knew, but I couldn't stop them. It's all my fault. Please, just once, let me talk to you again. Please pick up. Brittany? That frail voice wore the shape of an apology, but it stirred nothing in me. When the playback ended, only the sound of the waves returned to the room. I stared silently at my phone. Jonathan peered into my face. Are you okay? Yes, I am. I lifted my head and smiled firmly at him. Hearing that voice erased the last of my doubt. Now I know without a single hesitation, my decision was right. What do you mean? He said, I'm sorry. But sorry for what? For keeping me locked in an exploitative system all those years? For killing my spirit piece by piece? No, what he was apologizing for was only one thing. That the situation had gotten so bad their security was threatened, and he had been too powerless to stop it. Jonathan nodded deeply. A textbook self-defense of someone who won't take responsibility. By asking for your forgiveness, he's really just trying to forgive himself. Exactly, I went on. If he were truly remorseful, the first thing he would do is face my mother and Kristen. He'd say, what you did was wrong. Before contacting me, he would work to rebuild their lives on their own. But he won't. He's only trying to drag me back into the system again to fix their problems for them. His last words weren't an apology. They were a new form of control. Their every action was contradictory. Even their apologies were nothing more than fresh tactics of manipulation. Sitting beside Jonathan, I quietly saved all those logs into a file. I named it Shutdown Log. Old system. The complete collapse of the system was confirmed. That's the final report, I said. Yes, a flawless record, Jonathan replied, and we'll never need to open it again. I nodded, then held down the power button on my phone. The light disappeared, leaving only a slab of black glass. The connection to the old world was, physically too, completely severed. A year passed. Jonathan and I lived quietly in our new apartment. On the wall hung just one wedding photo, us smiling radiantly despite the rows of empty seats. It was no longer a symbol of pain. It was a monument to the freedom we had won, proof that we had cut the chains with our own hands and built a new life. Not long after moving in, Jonathan's parents invited us to dinner. There, they welcomed me warmly. "You are truly our daughter now." At their unconditional love that surpassed blood, I broke down in tears. All the sorrow I had buried for so long finally washed out of me, purified with those tears. From my old family, there has been no contact. Only occasionally did my uncle update me on their situation. Because I stopped sending money, the loan for my father's welfare vehicle soon fell behind. The car was repossessed. His mobility became severely restricted, and no one had the means to help. Kristen, once playing at being an influencer, lost all her PR contracts in the social media firestorm. Her income dropped to zero. With my financial support gone, her extravagant lifestyle collapsed. Her proud engagement ended when her fiancé quickly lost interest. My mother, for the first time in her life, took a part-time job to support the household. But she couldn't withstand the unfamiliar work and the cold stares of the community. It didn't last. Eventually, they could no longer maintain the mortgage. They sold the house and moved quietly to another town. It was self-inflicted. Even as my uncle told me all this, I felt nothing. Only once on my birthday did a short message arrive from an unfamiliar number. My father's phone. "Brittany, happy birthday, that's all." I neither deleted it nor replied. Was there regret hidden in those few words? Or was it the start of another trap, another attempt to draw me back? I didn't know, but it no longer mattered. The authority to judge, to respond, to manage the risks, all of it now rested with me. After staring at the screen for a few seconds, I set the phone down and smiled at Jonathan, who was brewing coffee beside me. The phrase, "because they're family," is not a license to excuse cruelty. If no one saves you, then you must save yourself. And family is not defined by blood. The people who truly value and love you, those are your real family. The door, I closed myself. Whether I ever choose to open it again, that too will be my decision. There are no chains left anywhere. In this country I designed and rule, the queen is me.